The 6-5 is on the road with a view from Davos, and this year's World Economic Forum is everything you would have expected. A combination of policy, we've got tariff discussions, we've got a lot of AI talk as well. Daniel, did I miss anything there?
I mean, just saying that it's everything you expect with the current administration, I don't know if you can ever expect what's coming next. I think the only thing we've come to expect is the unexpected, and here we are again. But it is the perfect place to bring together world leaders, technology companies, smart analysts, for great conversations about really where are we heading. Yeah, I looked right over you and said that. But because, there's nothing that's changing the world faster than technology right now, and I think right now some of the debates, whether it's about impact on jobs and careers, impacts on societies, energy, policy, and of course, just the implementation of all this technology and what it means for productivity and the economy at large.
That's right. One of the companies that's really been on the move, not only in the AI trade, but delivering true AI value is Cisco. And we have covered a lot of content, a lot of events there. And it's my distinct pleasure to thank Jeetu for coming back on the show.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so maybe we started off. What are you finding that's a little different this year at World Economic Forum, and not why are you here and what are you doing here, but what is a good event for you?
I think the reason I love this event is because the density of the people that you want to meet that can happen within a very compressed time period is unlike anything else. And so that's always great. I think there's more and more of these summits, but this place is magical, and so I hope that I keep coming to these things. At least as long as I'm able to, I'll continue to keep coming here. What is different is 25 in my mind was a year of experimentation. Like, there was a lot of experiments that were happening with Agentic AI, and there was enterprises were starting out pilots. I think 26 you're going to see a lot of those pilots go into production. And so that in my mind is, you can see a palpable enthusiasm where some of those pilots are starting to work. Certain industries like pharmaceuticals and financial services and healthcare are actually starting to see momentum in some pretty big ways. And so I'm quite optimistic about what's going to happen in 26 from that perspective.
So wait, are you saying it's not a bubble?
This is a question that's probably the most asked question in TV interviews, is bubble and jobs. And so I would say that on the bubble side, you can have frothy, overvalued companies, but that does not constitute the negation of the movement that we are in, which is probably one of the most consequential movements we'll see in the history of humanity. And so I think those two things can be on at the same time. There'll be a few companies that will have frothy, kind of valuations, but in general, it's hard to deny that this is going to be a seismic shift. I think, like anything else, like any other movement like this, in the short term, people grossly overestimate its impact. In the long term, they massively miss the mark and underestimate the impact. But we are also normalizing much faster. Like Waymo is now in full production, right?
And in Austin, every day I walk to work, I see at least 3 Waymos coming down the street.
It's freaking. People amazing. Are like, yeah, this is just normal course. Like, we just have gotten used to it. That cars drive themselves, and you sit in the back and you do your thing, and you don't have to talk to anyone, and you're in the car, and now that is amazing. A normal thing.
Sounds amazing.
And people are like, are we going to be? Is AI going to work? I'm like, what are you talking about? It's already working.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I had a debate last night here with an AI doomer, and he was trying to come out and say nothing works, and I'm like, have you been using this? Like, have you used this stuff? Because I mean, the last year, just seeing you talked about the autonomous driving, which people will say, oh, well, Teslas get an accident. Not nearly as many as humans do. I really think, what do you think the benchmark is, like human versus the machine, right? In the end, it's like, you look at like Cowork from Anthropic and how quickly that came out of thin air. What's the benchmark that means
I think the benchmark's
working?
higher than what a human does. So if you think about even safety and autonomous driving, if you had the same benchmark as human safety, it would not be an acceptable solution societally. Like, you have to be higher in safety, kind of metrics than what you would be able to do as a human. And so that's just the nature of how this movement's actually starting to form. But I do feel like, in general, it's the zero-sum nature of hyperbolic media, I don't think does it a good service, because like, okay, so now all jobs are lost and people are going to be staring out of the ocean because they have nothing productive to add to society, or AI is completely useless and doesn't do anything at all. Neither of those narratives actually end up being productive narratives, because the reality is it's going to be a fantastic augmentation to what humans do. And I don't think for a long time, all human value to society is going to end. Like, I don't think it'll ever happen. We're far too creative a species.
Well, and I think historically, when you look back, and whether it was the industrialization, the electrification, or the computerization of society, there were concerns along the way. And I think we can all agree what is different is the slope of the curve.
Slope of the curve is very steep.
And I do think long term, we're going to mimic what we did through all of these other revolutions. And there will be some chop as we get here.
But there's one thing that's different, though, is I think there's a skeuomorphic nature to the analogies that are being drawn that are very kind of, like we talk about AI as though it's a human. And so that then changes the way that people process this information as well. And like I'll give you an example. Like, we use AI in coding. We're the first design partner of Codex. We use AI in coding in our company, and the biggest realization that our team had is if you actually think about AI not as a tool, but you think of AI as a teammate, you actually get a completely different framing on how you can use it. But it sounds, it then, by definition, poses the question, well, then do I need the engineers?
Right.
The reality is yes, you need the engineers because you're not going to be short of any kind of idea inventory. But it'd be nice to have some augmentation of kind of, AI agents to be able to speed up the development.
Well, what's going to happen is we're going to have more coders, right? If you look at when the iPhone came out, and I mean, when Harvard Graphics came out, we were going to put all graphics people out of business. And then when the iPhone came out and started taking really good pictures, all photographers. And what we did is we empowered more people to do that.
Good pictures.
And I know Daniel and I have even vibe coded certain things.
Daniel.
And I think
Are you surprised just about me?
Yes, because I know he can do it.
Well, Daniel, you know what? Let's auger in on this. No, I'm just kidding. So I think we're going to see the same phenomena. You're going to see people who never could code, couldn't even think about it, but they can describe what they want with a little bit of detail, and then when they see what they want, they can respond to that. So I think we're all AI optimists here, okay? But I would like to get back to Cisco here, if that's okay.
Yes.
I want one last thought on this topic. Cisco,
a 7-hour programming episode.
You know how this works.
This is great.
You've done enough with us.
Yeah,
we go off
keep going,
script.
man.
That's what makes these awesome.
Yeah.
Cisco is actually the company that gets constantly. You've been through what was, and by the way, the internet ended up being a really big thing, but it also was a really big bubble for a period of time. Cisco is one of those companies people bring up because Cisco had an incredible run, and then obviously now you're, I think, working towards your next incredible run. Yeah. But as you're doing this, like, you guys had to have drawn the compare. I mean, do you have any kind of comments on that? Because I mean, nobody looks at the bubble more and says AI is another internet. It's like you guys were in the middle of that.
Is it?
The only difference is in the past, when there was a platform shift that occurred, the adoption and the usage was slow following. This time around, any infra that you sell is already being consumed. In fact, it's being consumed before you sold it. They want it yesterday. So like when you think about, is this a bubble or not? Like if you base it on usage, if you base it on value created, if you base it on revenue generated, it's hard to think that it's going to have this kind of effect. However, there will be frothy companies, and you should not discount that. And by the way, that is a feature of a platform shift, not a bug, because what ends up happening is there's a ton of experimentation that happens. There's capital that flows into that, and then a few of those win, and then the others don't, and then that's just the whole cycle.
Is there something you're seeing out there? I mean, Cisco does so much. I mean, you're all the way from silicon to edge devices with collaboration, everything in between.
I will say, in the past 5.5 years, I've learned more than I've learned in any other job in my entire career of 33 years. It's the range that Cisco covers is so ridiculous.
Are there some themes out there that you're seeing out there, whether they be maybe headlines or discussions you're having, and you're saying, hey, this is not accurate, or the reality is, if I look at across your networking, your data platforms, I look at observability and obviously security. One thing to me at least is that security got a lot of attention up front, and it gets probably less attention that it deserves today. And maybe if you can, you brought out threat defense, you brought out AI, specific AI tools to go up against that. Like what is the real threat? I don't think it's overblown. You have real conversations with the biggest governments and probably the highest risk entities out there.
I think the real threat is that the same tools that we use are the tools that are available to adversaries. And if you think about how adversaries can infiltrate your network and do lateral movement, you cannot have cyber defense at human scale when you have those attacks happening at machine scale. You have to have a commensurate defense strategy at machine scale. So that's number one. That's the thing that's, I think it's pretty common knowledge that that's what you need to do. But the second piece that is not talked about as much is securing AI itself. These are non-deterministic systems on top of which you're trying to build very predictable deterministic applications for the enterprise. Right, yep. And when you try to do that, you need to make sure that you have to have the right level of visibility, enforcement of guardrails. And if you don't have that, then AI itself is not secured. And then that becomes the foundation point from which everything else propagates. And so you need to have those kind of guardrails in place. And that's where we've had a tremendous amount of kind of success in our security stack, is we had a product called AI Defense that we launched last year at the AI Summit. This year we have an AI Summit that's even bigger and better. My only challenge I have this year with the AI Summit is I have no idea what I'm going to do next year, because we've got every person that you would want and dream of is on our AI Summit.
The lineup
you're gonna
is impressive.
You're going to do the sphere. That's a great idea. Although this one is a pretty frugal event. We don't spend that much money on it. We just get the right people.
Don't you love it? I actually am now using our platform to sell new ideas.
I mean,
you gotta love this.
I do love you, Dan.
So last year when we talked, and you've been on numerous times, love having you here. You kind of had you had the regular cadence of talking. You were talking about like network limitations, software.
Still exists.
Right. One is, I was going to ask you, are the limitations still the same? And I want to two-part you here, because I'm famous for asking long questions that you can't remember all the parts. When you talk to all, enterprises are often kind of guilty of moving slow. Like, you see how fast the hyperscalers are moving. You guys work with the hyperscalers, but you also work with the enterprises very closely. Like, are the enterprises moving fast enough? Are they moving as fast as they should be, seeing how fast stuff's coming out to the consumer?
I think the market in general is moving at a much faster pace than we've ever moved before. But going back to your question of what's different about the constraints, because if you think about the constraints right now, there's three major constraints. Infrastructure is a constraint, which means there's not enough power, compute, and network bandwidth in the world to satiate the needs of AI. That's number one. Number two, there's a trust deficit. I think if you don't have enough safety and security factored into the system and securing AI, then I think no one's going to use them. This is the first time that safety and security are prerequisites for the adoption of AI. And then the third one is there's a data gap. I think we are running out of humanly available data publicly available on the internet. And then you're starting to see synthetic data on the rise, but you're also starting to see that machine data getting correlated with human data is a pretty important thing. So in these three areas, if I start with the infrastructure, we used to be in scale out networking, which means that you had clusters in hyperscalers or in data centers that you would stitch together and network together for a training run. We are now doing scale across networking. Sure. And so you can now have a router that can connect two clusters in two different data centers, hundreds of kilometers apart. And the reason that's important is because your constraint is power. You don't have enough power to be able to be pulled in a single location, so that you might need to go to wherever the power is and then make sure that you have these clusters start to operate like one coherent cluster, what we call ultra clusters. And so I feel like that is an area that there's going to be a huge amount of upside. What that requires is everything from the silicon has to be re-architected. You have to build silicon with deep buffering. You have to make sure that security is baked into it, because now you're going to go and have traffic go across different, kind of different properties. There's a fair amount of that all of those kind of innovations that need to happen, which we have actually been working on and spent billions of dollars over the course of the past few years of making that come to life. And that, I feel, is something that is a super interesting development. And then the other one is time series data that creates machine data lakes that can then be correlated with human data, so that you can now start to see infrastructure resilience in a very different level through automation. Like, I feel like that's an area that with Splunk, we have really kind of, I think there's going to be some escape velocity over there that happens.
You know, it's interesting. More people are talking about the edge, but not as much as, let's say, we did 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, I mean, I don't think there's anything new ever. I mean, we were talking machine learning on the edge 7 or 8 years ago. We were doing very simple robotics things, but the basics of pulling information off of a gas well, or being able to monitor every 500 feet of a gas line. What is different now that makes that opportunity even bigger? You know, you hear other people in the industry talking about the edge a lot, whether it's robotics, but also classic industrial IoT in redoing manufacturing plants, distribution centers, and hospitals. How are things different now than they were 7 or 8 years ago?
So firstly, I think the edge is a real opportunity, and I don't think token generation will be relegated only to data centers. I think you're going to need to generate tokens everywhere. And edge is a perfectly great location to start generating tokens, which have a very different set of characteristics that you might need. Like, for example, if you don't have enough time to do a round trip for very low latency applications like robotics, you might want to make sure that you're at the edge. You know, kind of branch applications that might be there. We just had a unified edge device that we launched, which was a network security and compute device that we can actually just have popped into a branch, plug and play. The reason for that is because the edge in a branch scenario does not have an IT staff, and you don't want someone super technical wiring those things together. You just want to go out and have it be plug and play, and then be able to monitor it centrally. Those are all kind of really good use cases for the edge, where inferencing will happen at the edge more and more, hands down.
I think we finally have, I mean, we had machine learning, and now we have generative AI and agentic AI. I finally think that
Physical will be the next.
we're probably looking at 100x in the ability to process that data on the edge. And that's why I think this opportunity is bigger than the one that we were all talking about 7 or 8 years ago. You can do more, right? We were talking about surveillance, using cameras for security systems. You can't process that at the mothership. You want to process that on the edge. The latency conversation has been out there for a long time, but I think that's going to be the difference maker. We can just do more useful things,
on the edge,
put the data to work more than it was ever
Plus,
before.
I could think about the underutilized compute capacity in everyone's palms. Like, you have a lot of compute that actually sits on the edge that can actually be fully deployed.
Yes, and I think we're finally finding ways to manage and distribute it and secure it that we didn't have before.
We didn't have before. So it's an exciting time.
As you know, I mean, you're hitting it on all the right cylinders right now. You know, networking is a huge problem we have to solve. Of course, security. It's actually probably not talked about enough. Frankly, we're moving so quickly.
Why do you think that is?
It's never been popular. I mean, I'm being sincere. It's always kind of like, I look at it as insurance.
Exactly. Yes.
And so the insurance industry is never that popular to talk about either. And in tech, security is the insurance. And so people are building quickly. And this is, by the way, the biggest risk of all the vibe coding and stuff is you build and deploy. You can commit code very fast, but like securing it is not trivial. And so
It's hard to measure too.
Yeah.
I mean, as CFO, if you say, hey, if I spend an extra $50 million on security, how much more secure am I? Well, it's complicated, okay? Yeah. And the people spending the money aren't satisfied with that. And security, as you know, it's not binary. I mean, they're secure, or I'm not.
Or you're not,
Right?
yeah.
It's a bunch of variables in there. So sorry to interrupt.
No,
it's
no,
just
I think it's great.
It's like it's always been immeasurable.
I know that we have to, Jeetu actually has some meetings, I think, here at Davos that aren't with
I
us.
was thinking we'd go to the middle of the night. This is great.
Yeah, no, I've got more.
Great time.
I've got more.
Marathon
We'll just,
session.
but you know, part of the deal of you being part of the family is we do this regularly. So we'll bring
Thank
you
you for
back.
having me
We'll
always.
have you on again, and there's more to talk about.
Can I just congratulate the two of you? I think you folks are doing a great job in just providing analysis that's thoughtful in the market. I think the world needs pragmatic, kind of thoughtful analysis that's given out. And having been an analyst for a portion of my career, I know how hard the job is. So congratulations for all the success you got.
I will let Gemini know.
Yeah,
She's doing a great job.
That's right.
No, G2, really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Really appreciate
Yeah,
that
that means
so
a lot.
much.
It goes to show a lot about my upbringing that I don't know how to take a compliment. But thank you so much, Jeetu. I appreciate that. And let's have you back again soon. It's always
I'd
great
love
to have
to.
you on the show. Have a great rest of your Davos.
Thank you. You too. Take care.
All right, and thank you everybody for being part of this 6.5. We are on the road with a view from Davos. That was Jeetu Patel, President, Chief Product Officer at Cisco, and regular here on the show. Subscribe, check out all the content that we did here in Davos, and of course, check out all of the great 6.5 content. Appreciate you being in the community. We'll see you all later.